Dario has a certain sensibility, which I love. It's always pushing the accelerator, you know, straight ahead and plow forward. And I really like that a lot.
You can't say restrained and Dario Argento in the same sentence unless the sentence is Dario Argento restrained me and then had his way with me.
I was doing a picture called Metti una sera a cena, let's say one night at dinner, directed by Petroni Griffi. Somehow, a script came to me, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, written by Dario Argento, and I said, yes, I'd love to do it. I saw it as the story of an ordinary person, Sam Dalmas, who is a writer. I consider a writer an ordinary person, who inadvertently becomes involved in a murder, and because of his own natural curiosity as a writer, helps solve the crime. In other words, he's an inadvertent hero, and that is what appealed to me about the script. You have to understand that there were several, may I say, young people involved in this picture. I'm including myself and Dario and Vittorio Storaro and an American fellow named Don Carlos Dunaway. Now, the reason why I mentioned those four guys is because we were all roughly the same age, late 20s, early 30s. And that's a very exciting time in anyone's life because you know you're going to conquer the world. You simply have to present yourself and you will all become stars. We all had that feeling. And it didn't matter that we spoke several different languages. I thought we were all in sync. Now, I spoke very little Italian. Dario spoke very little English. Don Dunaway, however, was an American who spoke English and Italian fluently. And Don is the one who did the English adaptation of Dario's script. I never really spoke to Dario because I was always speaking through Don Dunaway. And Dario smiled a lot, and I smiled back, and I thought we were in sync. Later on, I learned that I was doing some things that he really didn't like, but he never told me he didn't like them. And the film got printed, and so I had a great time working with Dario.
We did a lot of communication just with eye contact and just a lot of sign language. I would just guess, and he'd say, "Bellissima," and applaud, and go, "Yay!" Or he'd come up from behind the camera and go, "Oh, not so good." And then you just, you just do it again, and he would go, "Oh, bellissima, bravo." And that's what you were just, I was always hoping for a bravo. When we were on set, he would do like a dance of how he wanted the camera to move and just take you through it and stuff like that. And then he would go, "Okay, you watch," and he would do exactly what he wanted you to do. And then you were free to do whatever you wanted to do in that context.
Ho sempre avuto un buon rapporto con Dario, non ho mai avuto screzi, insomma abbiamo fatto una decina di film insieme. E lui subito ha le idee abbastanza chiare sul tipo di musica che vuole, quindi le indicazioni di Dario sono fondamentali e importanti per lo sviluppo poi della composizione. Però poi dopo devo dire che lui ha sempre lasciato carta bianca.
Dario, I didn't realize, was going to become the grand master of horror films. So when people say to me, "You've worked with the grand master of horror films," I don't consider The Bird with the Crystal Plumage a horror film. Giallo comes from the fact that certain mysteries in Italy came out in yellow-colored covers. Giallo simply became the genre for horror stories, for mystery stories, only because of the color of the magazines. So when people would say, "Oh, you're shooting a Giallo," I'm shooting a Giallo. When I finally realized what Giallo meant, I said, yes, I'm shooting a Giallo. See.
And the thing about Dario's films are that sometimes they're kind of hard to follow because they're very Italian sensibilities, and sometimes can be very confusing and very crazy and surreal.
He loves color, he loves texture, he loves very kind of tensile sensual aspects of the story, even more than the story itself, even more than the script.
E poi mio padre chiaramente lavorava per la casa discografica che era la Cinevox, e grazie a questo contatto che ci diede mio padre con Carlo Bixio, avevamo fatto con i Goblin dei Provini a Londra, decise di farci fare il nostro album per la Cinevox. E durante la registrazione di questo album Dario Argento, che già aveva fatto 3 film o 4 con Bixio, stava cercando un gruppo rock per eseguire la colonna sonora di un suo film, e quindi allora Carlo Bixio prese la palla al balzo e gli fece sentire le musiche che noi stavamo facendo in studio. Dario ascoltò le nostre musiche e disse: ah, bello, mi piacciono questi ragazzi, facciamo fare le musiche a loro. Però non dovevamo comporle noi, dovevamo solamente eseguirle. Le musiche erano di Giorgio Gaslini. Dopodiché, per fortuna o per sfortuna, fortuna nostra e sfortuna di Gaslini, appunto Giorgio Gaslini litigò con Dario Argento e poi lasciò il film. Quindi esisteva il film Profondo Rosso, che era fatto per neanche la metà, molto meno della metà era stata fatta. E allora Dario Argento disse: perché non, allora a questo punto fatela tutto voi, finitela voi. E nel farci realizzare le musiche, comporle noi, eravamo appunto i giovani e inesperti, fra virgolette, però le nostre musiche si adattavano molto al genere che voleva Dario, e quindi in una notte buia e tempestosa, come direbbe Snoopy, abbiamo composto il tema di Profondo Rosso. Beh, Suspiria è stato sicuramente il film più innovativo dei Goblin. Era comunque un film fatto abbastanza di fretta, e infatti se tu senti bene Profondo Rosso non c'è molta musica nel film, sono pochi temi messi nel momento giusto. Siamo stati anche dei precursori nella musica elettronica, perché Suspiria è molto elettronico, unito appunto anche a strumenti come il buzuki, il tabla indiano. Insomma, c'è stata una grandissima ricerca di sonorità, e quindi lì veramente credo che siano stati il vero sound dei Goblin sia proprio in quel film, forse più che in qualsiasi altro. Infatti è anche la colonna sonora forse più considerata all'estero, sì.
I just remember seeing it the first time and it just made me horribly uncomfortable, you know, a room full of bales of wire and strange eyeballs hanging, and it just adds to the feeling of discomfort that I enjoy when I watch a film like that.
Di scrivere la musica sulle sceneggiature è stato per Suspiria. Dario ci diede il suo copione e noi abbiamo cominciato a scrivere delle musiche che poi lui ha usato anche sul set, un po' per creare l'ambientazione, però poi vedendo il film alla fine era talmente diverso da come l'avevamo immaginato che abbiamo riscritto tutto da capo. Però ci sono stati, anche il cartaglio stesso per me è stata un'esperienza bellissima, è stato il primo film che ho fatto anche stando sul set tutti i giorni con Dario, quindi io spesso scrivevo delle cose e poi andavo lì da lui in macchina, gli facevo sentire quello che stavo facendo, ed è una colonna sonora nata insieme al film, cosa che non era mai successa prima. Invece qua in questo caso io devo proprio girare il film quotidianamente e quindi più o meno pensavo a quello che dovevo fare. Sempre con Dario.
I love all Dario's films, but I have to say one of my favorites is probably Opera. I remember back in the 80s watching it with my then business partner, Bob Kurtzman, who's the K&B. And we were watching going, this guy is amazing. I mean, just shot after shot is so spectacular.
He chops up a lot of women, he chops up a lot of children, but he also brings it to the other spectrum that we don't really do here in Canada and America. We don't have a lot of violence towards men, and I think that it should be a full spectrum of violence. If you're gonna kill a 5-year-old child, then it should be okay that you chomp off a penis at the end of Jennifer, which they cut out, and I hear that Dario is pretty choked about it because he is one of the only directors who got anything edited out of his show. But I guess chomping off a penis it makes men uncomfortable for some reason.
There's a movie he did called Tenebrae, and there's a scene where a woman gets her arm chopped off and like gallons of blood spraying everywhere. Well, when we did Kill Bill, that was the, you know, the point of reference Quentin Tarantino gave us for Sophie's arm chop when Uma cuts off Sophie's arm. Tenebrae, make it better than Tenebrae.
Jennifer was based on a Bruce Jones story in an issue of Creepy magazine. I never forgot that story. I always thought it was fantastic. Great artwork by Bernie Wrightson, who's one of my gods. And in fact, we were doing Desperation that Mick Garris directed, and he was talking about the Masters of Horror series, and and they needed another story. And I pitched this story, and he said, "Why don't you write it?" And I said, "Okay."
The one thing that's not in the comic is the origin of Jennifer, and that's something that Dario wanted to examine. It's not in the show, but we had to have some sort of reason why Jennifer is the way she is. Is she a deformed person? Is she a monster? And Dario came out, just felt she was an alien, some sort of alien that got dropped on Earth, has this gorgeous body and a face to protect it.
Steven Weber made a point I was like, I just don't understand how a man can be attracted to her. I'm kind of having trouble wrapping my head around that. And he said that a guy, if she has a nice rack, will pretty much make out with anything.
I was at a disadvantage as an actor and a writer working with Dario because I think I was a little in awe of him. The reason why I was at a disadvantage was because if he asked me to do anything, no matter how outrageous, and he could ask you to do occasionally outrageous things, I'd say, "Sure, okay, great." He also had never worked with the actor who had also written the script as well, so he also, I found out, was a little nervous about it as well. Jennifer's makeup was kind of an interesting problem because the original concept of it, as created by Bernie Wrightson, almost made her look like a Morlock from Time Machine.
I was prepared for how hard it was to be able to breathe under the mask and stuff like that, because I'd sort of done some stuff like that before, but I'd never had a grotesque mask on.
But it proved a little difficult, actually, I think, given the amount of time and kind of budget that the show has. So they had to make certain modifications, which I think are very effective.
We life cast her, and I sculpted this face, in a night, got it approved, and off I went to, Canada. We did a test makeup, and Dario had some changes in some of the paint work, and maybe make her a little bit more horrible, pulling down her lips a little bit more. And then Anthem Effects went in and digitally augmented her eyes, enlarging one eye, making it a little more asymmetrical. Because we were limited to what we could do practical, of course, although we had big black contact lenses.
It was pretty difficult to walk around the set. But then I got so used to it, and I started to miss the smell of the mask, and I could wake up in the morning, I would actually still feel it on my face and stuff. The dentures were uncomfortable because they went on normal, but they had this piece that made my lip stay up, so that cut into my mouth a bit, but that's what you get paid the big bucks for. A lot of people had never seen me without the makeup on, and Dario, when he saw me, he's like, "Oh, bellissima!" And he, later on that day, he came up to me and goes, "I had a dream of you last night. You have no mask, and you are Madonna." And I was like, what is he saying? He's saying, "Oh, I get to have my face in the show." And so he put a scene in where Steven Weber character has a dream of me without my makeup on. And I was like, awesome.
There are a couple of aspects involving the erotic aspect of this story that he wanted to do was really expand that. And as much as I love, gritty porn, this, bloody horror porn, I didn't think that it was necessarily appropriate, but God, Dario, just go, man, go.
There was one thing we did never shot, and something Dario was very specific about, and I built it. It was very strange. He wanted this weird alien vagina. And so I basically created out of chicken parts and meat and liver a weird alien vagina. And I had it there. We were going to shoot second unit, and I took it to Dario. He's like, "Oh, he's beautiful. He's bellissimo, bellissimo." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a great alien vagina." But the producer saw it and went, "Oh, we're never going to shoot that." I'm like, "Come on, we got to shoot that." And we never did, So somewhere in the dump is a great alien vagina rotting somewhere because it was all real chicken parts and skin and really gross. It was really despicable.
Dario has an instinct for the strange, the macabre, in juxtaposition with normal life. And it's that juxtaposition, in my opinion, that creates horror. And I think Dario's captured that.
If you get no reaction from a piece of art, film, painting, sculpture, then it hasn't succeeded. But if you come out of the theater upset, happy, sad, miserable, angry, it evokes some sort of feeling, and that's what art is about.
And cut. Good. Very good. Very good.